My colleague, Paul Sisco, has more.
Diplomatically, the United States has consistently and unequivocally stood with and by the people of Zimbabwe, the United States recognizing the republic since its independence from Britain, April 18, 1980. The U.S. was the first nation to open an embassy there, pledging assistance towards its future democratic and economic development. America's commitment to work with the nation, promoting democracy, equitable economic growth, public health, and food security is steadfast. Between 2000 and 2008, the U.S. led international condemnation of the Mugabe government's assault on human rights and the rule of law. U.S. restrictions followed by financial sanctions against specific individuals and entities and a suspension of non-humanitarian government-to-government assistance began in 2001. Despite continued interference from the Mugabe administration, America remains Zimbabwe's largest provider of development and humanitarian assistance. And, despite years of harsh condemnation from Mugabe, the U.S. government continues to promote exchanges like the Young African Leaders Initiative and joint business ventures aimed at Zimbabwe's economic recovery following years of its decline. U.S. development assistance programs in health, agriculture, and food security continue. The U.S. State Department's Stephanie Sullivan says the U.S. is not shifting its policies following the removal of Mugabe from power.
There is no plan to change anything related to the sanctions regime. There's some very specific things that we would like to see happen before we even consider revisiting that.
The international community is anxiously waiting to see if Zimbabwe can hold free, fair, and transparent elections, slated for August 2018. The July 13 election, returning Robert Mugabe to office, a large victory for his ZANU-PF party, were universally condemned as not representing the will of the Zimbabwean people. ZANU-PF activist Frank Gooney dismissed election concerns, saying reforms are ongoing under the government of new President Emmerson Mnangagwa.
Already reforms are undergoing. The electoral law is being reformed and is being realigned with the Constitution of Zimbabwe. As we speak, it was introduced in Parliament last Thursday. That's the critical element in terms of making sure that our next elections are going to be conducted in conformity with the Constitution and the laws of Zimbabwe.
U.S. Senator Jeff Flake expressed serious concerns shared by many in the U.S. Congress.
Those of us who watch Zimbabwe closely are also hopeful that this marks a turning point for the country that has suffered complete economic devastation under a dictator who stifled dissent and trampled basic human rights. Zimbabwe has a new president, but the critical questions of whether the new government reflects material change from Mugabe's decades of rule and what path Zimbabwe is likely to take under President Mnangagwa, these are things still left unsettled.
Successive U.S. administrations have made it clear the easing of its targeted sanctions will take place only after credible, transparent, and lasting democratic reforms are put in place. In addition to the United States, Britain and the European Union say Zimbabwe's future will ultimately depend on the execution of a free, fair, and credible general election in 2018, and the extent to which the country implements far-reaching economic and political reforms while upholding constitutionalism. Can the new government in Zimbabwe rise to the challenge? Paul Sisco, VOA News, Washington.
Thanks, Paul, for that interesting report.